Alright, so quick reminder of context. We are in the back half of the book of Isaiah. We are slowly but surely reaching its end. We're not going to do a deep dive analysis of every single aspect of it. There are certain parts we'll focus on more than others. But we're picking up in chapter 51. Last time, which was 2 weeks ago, we ended with chapter 50, where we saw the third of Isaiah's servant songs, where Isaiah goes and he describes this servant of the Lord who's going to come around and do some pretty awesome things. And one thing that we have been emphasizing as we've gone through these is that, well, I guess not emphasizing, we've been wrestling through the question of who is the servant being described. Really, people have different opinions on it. You can go read all sorts of commentaries asking who this servant is, but most people would land at two primary answers, right? This is either talking about Israel itself, or it's talking about the Messiah. And we've talked about how we have pretty good reason to believe that the servant is the Messiah, in which case, as Christians, we would say it's Jesus. But even if it wasn't the Messiah, even if it was just talking about Israel, the cool thing is that the New Testament positions Jesus as, living out Israel's history, right? Like, he is the ultimate Israelite, and therefore, he fulfills that as well. But anyways, we're just going to go through chapter 55 tonight, and we are going to encounter one more servant song along the way, and that is probably the most famous servant song from a Christian perspective for sure. But I don't want us to simply understand that song from a Christian perspective. I want us to try to understand it from the perspective of the people as they would have originally read it, so that then hopefully we can have a better understanding of why we believe it to be about Jesus. But that doesn't come until the end of chapter 52, and today we're picking up in chapter 51. So let's pick up with chapter 51, verse 1. Sean's not here, so I will read for us. Listen to me, you who pursue righteousness, who seek Yahweh. Look to the rock from which you were hewn, and to the quarry from which you were dug. Look to Abraham your father, and to Sarah, who brought you forth from through labor pains. When he was but one, I called him. Then I blessed him and multiplied him. Indeed, Yahweh will comfort Zion. He will comfort all her waste places. In her wilderness he will make like Eden, and her desert like the garden of Yahweh. Joy and gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving and sound of a melody. Alright, so, first off, who is Isaiah speaking to right here?
Those who are still faithful to God.
Yes, how do you know that?
It talks about those who seek righteousness, or pursue righteousness and seek Yahweh, and those would be those who are faithful to Him.
Yeah. One thing I like to highlight is just the way that the way Hebrew poetry works is that like the way our poetry often works is that we try to rhyme the ends of lines and stuff like that.
Yes.
But with Hebrew poetry, it's more like it's called like parallelism, right? To where one line will be paralleled by the other one, which kind of explains the other one more. And I think it's cool that pursue righteousness is viewed as synonymous with seeking Yahweh, right? So like right there we see that from the perspective of Isaiah, seeking Yahweh is the path to righteousness, right? So it isn't saying just going out and doing good stuff. It's like, no, the key to righteousness is faith in Yahweh, right? It's like that is the path to actual righteousness. What does he tell them to do? So he tells them to listen up, but what does he tell them to do after that?
Pursue righteousness.
Well, no, that's how he's describing it. They're already doing that.
Yeah.
What does he tell them to do?
He says to look to Abraham as like an example, I suppose.
Yeah. So basically, look back to where you started.
Your ancestors.
Right? So he says, look to the rock from which you were hewn, to the quarry from which you were dug. Just like go back to the beginning and look at what you were before you were, a kingdom with all these palaces and walls and stuff. Go back to the original rock, right? And sometimes whenever you hear it referring to the rock of Israel, you might think it's talking about God himself. But in this instance, it's talking about Abraham, right? Look at Abraham and Sarah. What does he say about Abraham and Sarah?
That they are the father and the mother of the people of Israel.
Yes, but ultimately, like, what does he want them to learn from this? Like, looking at like the end of verse 2.
Faith in. I'm thinking it's faith through their labor pains, like through
throughout what God's going to have them go through during their journey.
Well, specifically, what is he saying? What does he communicate about Abraham and Sarah at the end of verse 2?
That he was the one who blessed them and caused them to become a nation.
Yeah, so ultimately, everything that Israel has is a direct result of God himself, right? Israel didn't earn anything for themselves. They didn't accomplish any of their things. And he says this is true all the way back to Abraham, right? And that's something we've been emphasizing throughout Isaiah, right? God is constantly reminding them, you cannot produce your own salvation. And whenever we hear the term salvation in Christian circles, we usually think about like eternal salvation. But I'm just using the term more broadly, right? Like you cannot like deliver yourself from your foreign enemies. You can't do any of that stuff. It all comes from God.
Yeah.
And he's pointing out the same was true ever since Abraham, right? Sarah gave birth to a nation, but whenever we first meet Sarah in Scripture, what is the one thing we know about her in addition to her being the wife of Abraham?
She's barren.
She's barren, right? And so Abraham and Sarah, they couldn't even produce a single child, much less a nation. But God says, I'm the one who blessed them. I'm the one who multiplied them. I'm the one who even called them, right? We don't know anything about Abraham's life prior to him being called. We just know that God called him, right? And so, furthermore, what lesson could they learn about that and apply it to their own lives in their own history? In verse 3.
That Yahweh is the only thing that can provide them comfort in their trying times.
Yeah. If God did that stuff for Abraham, he will do it for us as well. And so, even though they're going to be going off into exile, because remember that's how chapter 39 ended, with the promise of exile, chapters 40 through 66 are all about comforting them in the midst of all that.
Yeah.
And so, he says, if God took Abraham and Sarah in their barrenness, and he multiplied them and comforted them and called them and did all these things for them, how much more will he do that for his people who he's already made all these promises to? Right? He hadn't even made any promises to Abraham, and he chose him and began making those promises. He'll do all that same stuff for us, right? So yes, he's going to send us off into exile, but from the wilderness, he will call us back. And our wilderness, he will turn into a Garden of Eden, right? And on one hand, this might actually foreshadow what will physically take place in the end times, where, literally just all things will be made new. But spiritually speaking, it's the idea that God will restore things to make them more beautiful again, right? Like, basically, this is Isaiah saying, a rough patch is coming, but God's going to fix things, right? And the cool thing that we know is that it's going to be even more literal than they probably were even thinking at the time. So ultimately, joy and gladness will be found in her, right? Right now, it's like you're being exiled from the garden, but one day you'll be back to the garden again. So we continue onwards. Pay attention to me, O my people, and give ear to me, O my nation. For a law will go forth from me, and I will set my justice for a light of the peoples. My righteousness is near. My salvation has gone forth. And my arms will judge the peoples. The coastlands will hope in me, and for my arm they will wait expectantly. Lift up your eyes to the sky, then look to the earth beneath. For the sky will vanish like smoke, and the earth will wear out like a garment, and its inhabitants will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will not be dismayed. Alright. So what does God say here?
That he already has a plan.
He already has a plan to accomplish what?
His salvation.
Yeah. Yeah, he
By
says...
the way,
What's that?
if you would like to not have to strain your voice,
Uh-huh.
considering I know you're probably going to try to preach tomorrow as well.
Oh, yeah.
I can
Yeah.
read
Okay.
if you want me to.
Sweet. We can go back and forth and everybody read a little bit. That might even be a better way to make sure everybody's locking in. Yeah, so what all does God communicate in these verses?
Verse 4, he says, pay attention and give ear.
So who's he talking to there?
Israel,
Okay.
all my people.
Well, the exiles not the exiles, the people in Judah who are needing comfort.
Yes. Because they will go into exile.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what does he say he is going to do eventually? Through all this. Through the exile, through their coming back from exile.
Specifically in verse
Still in verse 4.
Still verse 4?
Mm-hmm.
He will set his justice as a light for the peoples, a light for the nations that surround him.
Yes. What does that mean?
So his justice, which for a large portion of what we've been reading has been a gift to Israel alone, will soon become a gift to the nations as well.
Yeah.
Through his righteous and through his righteousness and through his plan for salvation.
Yeah. And one thing that's cool here, I wish that we translated it differently, but any guesses as to what the Hebrew word for law is there?
Not sure.
Torah. Right?
Oh.
It's just the word Torah. Right? Like usually whenever you encounter the word law in English in the Old Testament, it's Torah. I wish we just translated it that way so that you could you can understand the implications of it. Right? So it says, "Pay attention to me, O my people, give ear to me, O my nation, for Torah will go forth from me, and I will set my justice for a light to the peoples." Right? So basically this is calling back to the fact that Israel was called to be a light to the nations. Isaiah uses that language in the book of Isaiah.
Yeah.
So he says that Israel was called to be a light to the nations, and God reassures them that through this exile and through the return from exile, they will do just that. And the Torah will go out, right? And this is something that specifically ties to the new covenant that we've talked about, right? How God says that one day, whenever they return from exile, in some way he's going, like this is also a little bit from Jeremiah and from Ezekiel as well, but it's found in Isaiah. The idea is that God will make a covenant with the people, and it'll be better than the covenant made under Moses, right? Because we've also talked about this through Isaiah. A second Exodus is coming, right? So the first Exodus, they left bondage, they went through the Red Sea, they arrived at the mountain, God gave them the Torah, right? Well, in the second Exodus, same thing's going to happen, right? He's going to lead them out of bondage, give them the Torah, but this Torah is not going to be just for them. It's going to go to all peoples. And then he says, "My righteousness is near, my salvation has gone forth. My arms will judge the peoples. The coastlands will hope in me." So we've talked about this. Whenever it says the coastlands, who's it referring to?
Like Phoenicia, Philistia.
Yeah, it
all
like
the
Gentile
nations of
nations.
Israel, yeah.
Right? He says, "Gentiles will come to hope in me, and for my arm they will wait expectantly." That's again language from the Exodus, right? With a mighty hand and outstretched arm, he delivered us from Egypt. He says, the Gentiles, as a result of what I'm going to do, they will come to wait for me. And so he tells them, lift your eyes up to the sky, look down at the earth beneath. What does that imagery convey? What should they be doing?
Look up and lift up your eyes to the sky. Then
Like
look to the
praising, worshiping him.
Kind of. I think more he's just telling them to examine the world around them. He's saying, look up, look down at the earth, like look everywhere. Right? I think that's more kind of what's going for. "For the sky will vanish like smoke, and the earth will wear out like a garment. Its inhabitants will die in like manner. But my salvation will be forever, and my righteousness will not be dismayed." So what does he convey in that?
Basically, he's saying that although the earth may, be destroyed someday, his promise of salvation and eternal life is, evident.
And again,
Prophecy.
whenever we read the word salvation, we don't want to always think of it in terms of eternal life. That is part of it. But I think whenever you see the word salvation in the Old Testament especially, it's just talking about God's ability to deliver you, right? Which that obviously it's both small term and big term, right? It's talking about just little deliverances, right? Deliverance from a battle, deliverance from an illness, but it also can be eternal salvation. But yeah, he just says, look all around you. You live in a world that is falling apart, right? If you look up at the sky, if you look down at the earth, there's earthquakes, there's tornadoes, there's hurricanes, there's all these things where creation itself is breaking. But he says, but one thing that will never break is my word, right? He says, the world you live in is a world that is destined to one day be destroyed. But my word and my righteousness, those will not break. I'm committed to fulfilling that. Make sense? All right, we continue. Nick, you want to read this?
Sure. "The one in chains will soon be set free, and will not die in the pit, nor will his bread be lacking. For I am Yahweh your God, who stirs up the sea, and its waves roar. Yahweh of hosts is his name. I have put my words in your mouth, and have covered you with the shadow of my hand, to establish the heavens, to found the earth, and to say to Zion, you are my people. Awaken yourself, awaken yourself. Arise, O Jerusalem. you who have drunk from the hand of Yahweh, the cup of his wrath, the chalice of reeling you have drained to the dregs. There is none to guide her among all the sons she has borne, nor is there one to take hold of her by the hand among all the sons she has reared.
All right. Thank you.
That's
So
imagery.
that is imagery.
Yes.
Um,
Drained to the dregs.
so what will one day happen? According to verse 14.
Chains will be loosened.
Yeah. So one day he'll set them free.
Mm-hmm.
Right. One day things will be better. And how do they know this?
Because his salvation is forever.
Yeah, because he's God, right? He's like, if you know my character, you know that my word can be trusted. And I love the description he gives of himself here, right? I am Yahweh your God who stirs up the sea and its waves roar, right? That part isn't that necessary. He just throws that in there to explain how powerful he is.
Yeah.
Kind of significant when you get to the New Testament and you've got Jesus waking up from a nap and calming the seas, right? Because whenever you read the Old Testament, it's constantly establishing that God is the one in charge of the weather and in charge of the like things that humans can't control.
Yeah.
And then Jesus just wakes up from a nap and is like, "Hey, stop!" And you're like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa!" But only God controls that stuff. If you can tell that thing to stop, then you are as powerful, if not more powerful, than God. And they're like, "Who is this man that even the wind and the waves obey him?" Right? Like that's why they get so confused. It's also ironic that Jesus wakes up from a nap and does that. Whenever in these verses right here,
He's
you hear
calling
him.
them to awaken them.
Yeah, God turns to the nation and says, "Awaken yourself." Right? Whereas if you go to the Gospels, it's the disciples waking up Jesus.
Yeah.
And he's like, "Guys, y'all are the ones who need to wake up."
Yeah.
Yeah, so he says, "Guys, you can trust me. I'm going to fix things, right? I have put my words in your mouth. I have covered you with the shadow of my hand to establish the heavens, to found the earth, to say to Zion, you are my people." He says, "Guys, you can trust me. I'm going to take care of it." In the meantime, what do they need to do?
They need to prepare themselves.
Yes. And he uses the image of waking up, right? Keith Green has this song. It's called "Asleep in the Light," and it's talking about the church, but I think it's very fitting to talk about Israel at the same time, because the whole song is talking about how we, as a modern church, we're supposed to be the light of the world. The world is cloaked in darkness, but like, how are we supposed to minister to the world if we are asleep in the light? And the idea is that as Christians, oftentimes we hit the metaphorical snooze button and we keep pushing off doing what God has called us to do. But that's what he's saying to Judah at this time period, right? Judah, that they've got the Torah, they have heard the prophets, they should have learned from their history of rebellion, but they haven't. And whenever Isaiah shows up, he's preaching a message from God, and everybody rejects it, and nobody listens. And so he says, awaken yourself, arise, O Jerusalem, you who have drunk from the hand of Yahweh, the cup of his wrath." He's like, you see how bad things are going to get, and they're going to get worse, right? You're going to be sent off into exile. So why are you still sinning? Like you realize what God is going to do to you. Shouldn't you respond and repent? But they're not doing it. And so as a result, verse 18, he says, there's nobody here who's a valid leader, right? Like none of y'all are worthy to be called king or prince, because y'all all have gone astray from God.
Yeah.
Anything y'all want to add to those verses?
I do have one thing.
Alright.
Isaiah is the prophet that I think God tells, he says to Isaiah, go and talk to Israel, but they won't listen. Is that correct about that?
Yeah. And to be fair, that's going to be the case for most of the prophets,
Yeah.
but Isaiah has the unfortunate reality of getting explicitly told that before he gets started, which is a bummer.
Yeah, that's
Going to be so discouraging. But I guess whenever, it at least lets you know what to expect, right? It manages your expectations. Whenever he goes and preaches to 1 million people, he's not surprised when nobody listens. He's like, I knew that was going to be the case. Anyways, we move on. Ben, how about you? You want to read these?
I got it, yeah. Awake, awake. Clothe yourself in your strength, O Zion. Clothe yourself in your glorious garments. O Jerusalem, the holy city, for the uncircumcised and the unclean will no longer come into you. For thus says Yahweh, you were sold for nothing, and you will be redeemed without money. For thus says Lord Yahweh, my people went down at the first into Egypt to sojourn there. Then the Assyrian oppressed them without cause. So now, what do I have here, declares Yahweh? Since my people have been taken away for nothing, Yahweh declares, those who rule over them howl, and my name is continually blasphemed all day long. Therefore my people shall know my name. Therefore in that day I am the one who is speaking. Here I am.
Alright. So,
Blasphemy.
I believe, I could be wrong here, but I'll double check myself. I'm pretty sure these verses right here are the ones that are quoted by the Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 2. So what does God say?
Wake yourself up.
That the nations who once oppressed Israel and Judah will no longer be able to, because God will be with them. And that, once the exile comes to pass, it's not necessarily that their days of oppression will be over, but they will no longer be subjugated to slavery in the same sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like this time, he's not just saying wake up to come to repentance. He's saying wake up because your suffering will come to an end.
Yeah.
Right? It's almost like you're the first time when he's saying awake, he's waking up somebody who is intentionally being slothful. Right? He's saying, hey, wake up and get to work. Yeah. Whereas this time it's almost like he's waking up a depressed person, right? A person who's just
lost all hope.
Yeah.
Wallowing in despair.
Yeah, so this time it's awake, clothe yourself in strength.
I don't think it's necessarily pity. I think it's more so it's the kind of comfort a parent brings to their child when they know that they're going through something tough.
Yeah.
It's the kind of supporting, comforting hand that a parent will offer their kid who is depressed or dealing with various different issues to lift them up, bring them back onto their feet, and give them something to look forward to.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and these are super encouraging words. I mean, these are words that even a parent couldn't even say to their kid. Imagine you can tell your kid, hey, you're never going to have to worry about that bully again. It's wow, that sounds fantastic.
Sounds like you're going to kill them.
Oh, that's true. Which is kind of what God is saying. So it's God's I've taken care of it. There is a verse in here that I did skip, I'm pretty sure. Verse 2 says, shake yourself from the dust, rise up, O captive Jerusalem, loose yourself from the chains around your neck, O captive daughter of Zion. So he's saying, I will free you. Yes. For thus says Yahweh, you were sold for nothing, and you will be redeemed without money. For thus says Lord Yahweh, my people went down at first into Egypt to sojourn there, then the Assyrian oppressed them without cause. So now, what do I have here, declares Yahweh, since my people have been taken away for nothing? Yahweh declares. So what is he saying there?
It's such an interesting line.
Talking about the slavery in Egypt.
Yeah,
as
in the first Exodus.
Side by I think it's a comparison between Israel's slavery and then future Assyrian oppression.
Well, the Assyrian oppression had already taken place, because this was written after the Israelites had already been taken into exile. Pretty much.
Well, we don't know if it was written afterwards or if he is writing. Yes, yeah. Foreseeing it, because that's where you get into the whole debate whether or not Isaiah was written by one or two people. Some people say that because we know that Isaiah ministered during the time period of Hezekiah, but then some people will suggest that chapters 40 through 66 were written by somebody totally different. Whereas I think that we have good reason to think they were all written by the same guy. But he is at the very least he's addressing the people in exile.
Yes.
Right. So yeah. To me these verses are very strange. I honestly probably should compare it to different translations and stuff. It seems to me in general what he's saying is that this all could have been avoided. He's more just I don't know why we had to do it the hard way. But let me see. Let me look at how some of the easier translations put it. Let's go with NLT. This is what the Sovereign Lord says. Long ago my people chose to live in Egypt. Now they are oppressed by Assyria. What is this? Why are my people enslaved again? Those who rule them shout in exultation. My name is blasphemed all day long. So that kind of goes to what I was saying, like where I think it's just him saying like, why, right? Like, you chose to get out of Egypt, and whenever it says, verse 4, when it says my people went down at the first time into Egypt, I'm assuming that that's probably got like a double meaning to it. I think the primary meaning is referring to the fact like they were enslaved in Egypt back in the first Exodus.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that the second thing could also be referencing earlier in the book of Isaiah, whenever they were going down to Egypt looking for help.
Yeah.
And so, like, it's almost like it's like a commentary on the fact that, like, you went to the place you were once enslaved to avoid being enslaved again? Like, it's almost like an irony to where he's like, why are you being this way?
Yeah.
Then the Assyrian oppressed them without cause, right? It's like, we could have avoided this if you had trusted in me. But instead, you went down to Egypt. Because back in Genesis, God at least told them to go to Egypt. Whereas here, he's like, you just chose to. And you chose to go back to the house of slavery. And now the Assyrian came and oppressed you. So now what do we have here? Right? My people have been taken away for nothing. Because the Babylonians come along and they're going to take you away too. It's like, you could have avoided this if you had just trusted in me.
Didn't they do that in the wilderness? Like when they were traveling from Egypt to Israel? Like during that time?
What do you...
in the wilderness, they were like, "What did we? We're gonna die in this wilderness. Why are we not back in Egypt?" I mean,
Israel ironically always looked back at Egypt as if it was like amazing, which is weird. Yeah. So what do we have here? Declares Yahweh. Since my people have been taken away for nothing, Yahweh declares, "Those who rule over them howl, and my name is continually blasphemed all day long. Therefore, my people shall know my name. Therefore, in that day, I am the one who is speaking. Here I am." So what does he say in those verses?
That they'll know that he is the one who is freeing them when that day comes.
Yeah. So it's like just like in Egypt, so too here, he will be the one who saves them. What I think is interesting here, though, is the way that Paul uses this verse in Romans. Because he specifically focuses on verse 5, where it says, "Those who rule over them howl, and my name is continually blasphemed all day long." So what God is talking about in that verse is he's talking about how the people who are holding Israel captive, right, Judah, like I said, the Babylonians, or the Assyrians, I guess if you're talking about the northern kingdom, the Gentiles, right, the pagan Gentiles, they are howling over them, taunting them, because they're saying, "Ha, we beat you." But then they're also blaspheming God, which is something that we would expect for Gentiles to do. But whenever Paul quotes this in Romans, he's quoting the Septuagint version, right, which is the Greek Old Testament. And the way that the Greek Old Testament presents verse 5 there is it actually places the blame on Israel, specifically. So in Romans, when he quotes it, it says, "For the name of God is blasphemed amongst the Gentiles because of you." So that's specifically how it's quoted there. Because ultimately, the only reason why the pagans can blaspheme the name of God is because Israel didn't put their faith in him.
Yeah.
Because if Israel had placed their faith in him, then the pagans wouldn't be able to blaspheme, because they would have lost, and God would have provided for them.
Yes.
But basically it's showing that Israel's disobedience is directly what results in God receiving less glory. And so the Septuagint translates it that way, and that's what Paul quotes in Romans chapter 2 whenever he's making his case. Like Romans 1, he's saying everybody is condemned because of their sin. Romans chapter 2, he says, yes, that means even Israel. Like Israel is condemned. And then he quotes this verse right here. And so I just think that's interesting that even in the midst of all this stuff, God is saying, you're the one, like we could have avoided this whole exile thing if you just trusted in me. But because you didn't trust in me, not only does it affect you, but it affects the other people too. You've made it harder for the Gentiles to respect me. Because you were supposed to be a light to the nations. And he says, I'm still going to be a light to the nations. But I'm going to have to work in spite of you, rather than through you. If that makes sense. And so, but he says, therefore my people shall know my name. Therefore in that day I am the one who is speaking, here I am. And again, the lingering question behind all of this is, how is God going to do this? Right? Like, God says that he's going to fulfill his promises. But Israel and Judah refuses to do it. Like, they refuse to participate. Right? And he says, I'm going to bring you back from exile, and I will handle it myself. And you're like, but how? Right? Like, how are you possibly going to do these things when your people refuse to listen? And this is ultimately going to build up to the final
We'll
servant song.
find out in about 4 minutes.
Yes. Real quick, let me just read the verses in between, because we are skipping quite a few.
Yeah.
But this is what it says, verses 7 through 12. Or let me just start out with verse 6. Therefore my people shall know my name, therefore in that day I am the one who is speaking, here I am. How lovely on the mountains are the feet of him who proclaims good news, who announces peace and proclaims good news of good things, who announces salvation and says to Zion, your God reigns. The voice of your watchmen, they lift up their voices, they shout joyfully together, for they will see with their own eyes when Yahweh returns to Zion. Break forth, shout joyfully together, you waste places of Jerusalem, for Yahweh has comforted his people, he has redeemed Jerusalem. Yahweh has bared his holy arm in the sight of all nations, that all the ends of the earth may see the salvation of our God. Depart, depart, go out from there. Touch nothing unclean. Go out from the midst of her. Purify yourselves, you who carry the vessels of Yahweh. But you will not go out in haste, nor will you go out as those who flee. For Yahweh will go before you, and the God of Israel will be your rear guard. So those verses right there are very interesting. So we got this question, how is God going to save his people when there's nobody who is willing to listen? And he says there are going to be people who are willing to listen. He says there are going to be people who see what God does, and they are going to carry that good news to the ends of the world. Right? It says, how lovely on the mountains are the feet of him who proclaims good news, who announces peace, proclaims the good news of good things, who announces salvation. Right? So he says there are going to be people who hear the good news, they're going to go to the ends of the world proclaiming our God reigns. And those people are going to be the ones who communicate exactly how God does this thing. Which is pretty cool, because from a Christian perspective, who does that sound like?
Us.
Sounds like us, and specifically, it sounds like the apostles,
Yes.
right? And then it even goes on, like if you just even notice what it said in verse 7, they announce salvation. In Hebrew, Yeshua, right? These people, they carry the good news, they announce Yeshua and say to Zion, your God reigns, right? Yeshua Mashiach, right? The Christ. Like, it's kind of cool if you just think of it that way. But it says that they are going to see with their eyes, they're the watchmen, and they are going to see how God raised his holy arm. Right? Again, it's the Exodus imagery. Like, these people are going to see the second Exodus. They're going to respond to it. They're going to carry out the news. And so the question is, what is that good news? This leads us into the final servant song of Isaiah. Brianne, could you read these verses for us?
Behold, my servant will prosper. He will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted. Just as many were appalled at you, my people. So his appearance was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of man. Thus he will sprinkle many nations. Kings will shut their mouths on account of him. For what had not been told them, they will see, and what they had not heard, they will understand. Who has believed our report, and to whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed?
All right. So, verse 12 ended by saying that in this second Exodus, God is going to be the one who goes before them and goes behind them, right? He's the one who's guiding them all the way out. And then you go to verse 13. Behold, my servant will prosper. He will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted. So this is interesting, right? This is the same servant we've been talking about in the 3 previous songs. And what have we learned about that servant in the previous songs? We don't have to go through every single little thing, but the stuff y'all remember.
That I seem to remember him being portrayed as like very humble.
Yes.
And very
You're not proud.
Yeah, whenever you go to the first
not
song.
like that of a conqueror.
What's that?
I said he's not portrayed as like a conquering king. He's portrayed as like a shepherd.
Yeah. Yeah, because like he's presented as a king, right, who rules and reigns in righteousness and justice, but he's very humble, right? It says like a bruised reed he will not break, right? He's a very humble and gentle person. But then as we've been reading the different songs, you've also had this idea of suffering alongside it, and we've been trying to figure out like what exactly does that mean, right? Like, how is he going to rule, but also suffer? Like, does the suffering come first, or does ruling come first? Like, what's going on there? And then now, all of a sudden, in the midst of this announcement that God will do something that results in good news, you get to verse 13. behold, my servant will prosper. He will be high and lifted up and greatly exalted.
Good start.
Yes. You hear that, you're like, that's amazing. Right? Good. Like, it means that the servant's going to do really great things. But then verse 14 kind of recontextualizes things a bit. Because it says, just as many were appalled at you, my people. So his appearance was marred more than any man, and his form more than the sons of man. Okay, so what is it saying there?
It's saying that despite the fact that he will be, or maybe in spite of the fact that he is lifted up and exalted even among the nations, many people are going to hate him more so than they hate the current people of Israel and Judah at this time.
Yeah.
So that his physical appearance, I'm guessing that's what it means in this. It could also mean his, like, how people perceive him,
Yeah.
which is also true to this day. It will become more marred than any other man in history.
Yeah.
There will be more people who hate this man and who love this man than any other in history.
Yeah. Well, yeah, so, like, he begins by saying at the beginning of verse 14, he says, basically he's talking about how, how currently I'm about to send you into exile. And I was just talking about how the nations are going to jeer at you and mock you. He says, that's what's going to happen to this servant as well. Which also would highlight to us that this wouldn't seemingly just be Israel.
Yes.
Right? Because he's saying, no, this is just as Israel, but it's a specific person.
Yes.
Right? So just as people were appalled by you, so people will be appalled by him. Right? You have all this language throughout the Old Testament where it's like, because of what God does to Israel, they become a byword to the nations. Right? People can just look and be like, wow, like, those people. Yeah, you don't want to be them. He says the same is going to happen to this person. But that's also a hard turn, because verse 13 said he's going to be high and lifted up. But this is where it's really cool, because as a Christian, we could actually argue that it isn't as sharp of a turn as it would have originally read in its original context. Because we would say that Christ's act of being high and lifted up is the very thing which also resulted in him being appalling to the nations. Right? Like that's why it's like when you get to Romans, Paul says, like, I'm not ashamed of the gospel. Right? Because like most people would have found the idea of like God being crucified, we'd be like they'd be like, what? That's embarrassing. And we're like, no, like he took this great act of humiliation and turned it into this great act of exaltation, right? It's like the thing that is appalling is the thing that makes him high and lifted up. And this is why Jesus used the same language. He says, just as the bronze serpent was lifted up in the wilderness, so the Son of Man shall be lifted up. To where it's like, he's literally going to be lifted up in a very degrading way, yet it is the thing by which we praise him for the most, right? Like, in our churches, we literally have torture devices hanging around our necks and hung up on walls. Like, because, like, that's what Christ did, right? So, It's kind of cool to where the original audience wouldn't have understood that, right? For them, verses 13 and 14 are a very hard shift. Whereas from us, we're like, well, no, it actually makes sense. It's like, him being high and lifted up is the thing that makes him appalling to people. But it also is the reason why he prospers.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets even more confusing, right? So it says, people are going to be appalled by this guy. His appearance is marred more than any man. His form more than sons of man. Like, the idea is that this guy is brutalized, right? He just looks disgusting. His flesh is ripped up. He looks terrible. And then it says, thus he will sprinkle many nations. What language is that?
Is it futuristic of some sort? Like some sort of futuristic, applying to like something in the gospel, like the not necessarily the crucifixion, but the trial.
Okay, but we're trying to think of it in terms of from a Jewish perspective, right?
Oh,
so every now and then I'm going to highlight the Christian stuff, but we're trying to understand the original context.
I was gonna say it reminds me of like in the Exodus, whenever God was like passing over the people of Egypt, and they took like lamb's blood and they would like sprinkle it over their door or whatever to know, like, for the spirit of the Lord to pass over their house and that they were safe. So it's kind of like the sprinkling of blood, like the forgiveness and the salvation of the Lord.
Yeah, and that's what it's getting at for sure. I don't know if they would have necessarily associated with the Exodus in particular, but in general, like when you get to Leviticus, like that's the language of sacrifice, right? You sprinkle blood, right? That's just what you do. It's like to where like literally whenever the priests are being like whenever the people are being sanctified, you sprinkle blood over the crowds.
So he's going to sanctify the nation.
Yeah, like this servant is the sacrifice.
Yeah.
That's interesting. It's like, wait, what? But I thought you said that this servant was going to reign. It's like, and we're going to get to that in this. So thus he will sprinkle many nations. But wait, so he's not just a sacrifice for Israel. He's a sacrifice for many nations. And kings will shut their mouths on account of him. For what had not been told them, they will see. And what they had not heard, they will understand. So these nations, they're pagan nations, right? They've never heard Isaiah. They don't know this stuff.
Yeah.
But they're going to hear news of something that's going to just, it's going to silence them.
They're going to receive the gospel.
Yeah, they're going to just be like, wait, what? And they're going to be humbled by this. Like, kings will bow down before this sacrifice. It's very weird. And then it goes on in chapter 53, who has believed our report? To whom has the arm of Yahweh been revealed? Like, you get this sense of disbelief from the people announcing this. And I'm assuming that the people who are announcing this good news is the same people mentioned back in chapter 52, verse 7. Right, where it says, how beautiful are the feet of him who proclaims the good news. This is them saying, who has believed us, right? Like, they're acknowledging what we're saying sounds weird.
And to show how much verse 15 is applicable, like, in, not even just in the long term, like nowadays, literally 300 years after Jesus is crucified, the emperor of the nation he was crucified by
yeah, of the empire. Yeah.
becomes a Christian.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, like, the emperor after that makes it the official religion of it.
Yes.
It's like, yeah, like that. It's, okay, that was weird. But no, yeah, like, that's literally what's happening. And it's crazy. And so, in chapter 53, verse 1, it just, like, they acknowledge, they say, this sounds unbelievable, right? The idea that one man will show up from Israel and do something so dramatic that literally it will shut up the kings of the pagan nations. That doesn't sound normal. It doesn't sound believable, especially whenever you realize that and somehow he's going to do this, even though he was rejected by the people of his day. It's like, what could possibly happen? And then it gets even crazier. Nick, you want to read these verses?
Alright, sure. For he grew up before him like a tender shoot, and like a root out of parched ground. He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him, nor appearance that we should desire him. He was despised and forsaken of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised, and we did not esteem him. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted.
Cool. So one thing I want to highlight before we even break it down is that Isaiah is using what scholars call the prophetic past tense, where everything he's saying here is spoken as if it were the past.
Yeah.
It's almost like Isaiah is stepping so far into the future that the events he's looking to look like they're the past. Like, and I think what that's supposed to do is it's speaking, like, I think the prophets do this a lot because it's conveying how confident they are in the word of God coming to pass.
Yeah.
Right? To where it's like to them, they're so confident of what awaits them in the future that they can speak of it as if it already happened.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense. So what do we learn about this servant in these verses?
He didn't really have looks that humanity would, like, you know, be attracted to him.
Yeah.
So no, like,
Yeah,
nothing
like he
handsome
didn't-
about him, maybe.
There wasn't anything about his physical presence that would like draw people to him.
Yeah. Which is especially strange if you, again,
It's not
if you,
like he was the world's most handsome man.
yes. Yeah, he wasn't the most interesting man in the world like the Dos Equis guy.
It was a George Clooney.
Yeah. But if you read this in the context of like chapter 52, right? Kings are going to be like they're going to shut their mouths because of this guy. Like, and you would typically think, oh, well, he must have been really impressive. And he said, well, no, it wasn't his physical appearance, right? Whenever you think of like impressive figures, even in the ancient times, it was always the good-looking people, right? It was like Samson, King Saul, right? Like the thing we know about King Saul is like he was a head taller than everybody else, or like Absalom with like this flowing head of hair. Not this guy. This guy is significant, but it's not because of how he looked, right? He grew up like before like a tender shoot, right? He grew up in relative obscurity. right? Like a root out of parched ground, right? He grew out of something where it's like, honestly, most people thought it was dead already, right? Parched ground, and there's just like a root growing out. It's like, oh, there's still life there. Cool. For us as Christians, we would hear Nathaniel saying, "Can anything good come out of Nazareth?" He has no stately form or majesty that we should look upon him. No appearance that we should desire him. He's like, there's nothing about this guy that like rings like, oh yes, this is a significant person.
He's
Like,
not clothed in the finest silks and
yeah,
live in a stately palace.
You wouldn't think he'd be a king.
yeah. And so from Isaiah's original audience's perspective, they're saying, so what is it about this guy that's so different about him? What is it about him that's going to cause people, let me reframe it like this. Isaiah has been suggesting that everything hinges on this dude, right? Because he's saying, hey, Israel, you've been rejecting your Lord, but don't worry, he's going to fix it. And it's like, but we've been rejecting him for thousands of years. It's like, how's he going to do it? Well, he's going to send this servant, and the servant's going to fix things and bring about a new covenant. Oh, wow. So, like, the servant must be a pretty big deal. Well, yeah, but not how you'd expect, right? He's going to be a big deal, but he's not going to have a lot of money to his name. He's not going to be really beautiful. He's not going to be a big deal in the way that the world likes to think of big deals. Oh, okay, well, so he's going to be ugly, but people are going to love him. Well, no. He's actually despised and forsaken of men. Man of sorrows, acquainted with grief. And like one from whom men hide their face, he was despised and we did not esteem him. Who does not esteem him?
That's what people like.
It's not that Israel?
Israel.
Yeah.
Right? Isaiah is speaking on behalf of the people. He says, we did not esteem him. Well, that makes it even more confusing. So you're saying, wait, Isaiah, you're telling me that God is going to fulfill his plans for us and for the nations, yet we are going to reject this guy too? So he's going to fulfill his plans for Israel, through Israel, but in spite of Israel. It's like, yes.
All of the above.
Yeah, all the above. Surely our griefs he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. So for the people that Isaiah is speaking to, whenever they're thinking of their griefs and their sorrows, what is he probably thinking of?
Their sins.
Sins, yes.
Sins, but think more like concretely, right? Because I think as Christians, it's very easy for us to look at verse 4 and be like, oh yes, this person is going to die for our sins. But think of it in their terms. What were the biggest griefs and sorrows they were dealing with?
Slavery?
In a way.
It could have been.
What is it that got, what was Isaiah telling them was going to happen soon?
The
Exile. Right? Well, this person, he's going to go through that with them, right? He is going to exile himself. He is going to willfully choose to be, like this is where, for us, we would take the language of, he took our sins upon him, right? He became sin who knew no sin. Well, for them, they would think of this in terms of exile, right? Their grief and their sorrow is that they're going to be exiled because of their sin. And they're going to metaphorically die and then be resurrected whenever they're brought back to the land. Well, he's going to take that grief upon himself, right? He doesn't have to, but he's bearing their grief, right? You get the implication that this person doesn't deserve this, right? He's not bearing his own grief. It's not his own sorrow he's carrying. No, he's bearing the griefs and sorrows of others, and he's coming to do, but for some reason they're rejecting him in spite of it. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God and afflicted. That's even stronger. So not only did they not esteem him, not only did Israel reject him, but what did they actually think of him? Whenever this person is rejected, what does Israel think about him?
That's a good thing.
Yeah, they think he's getting what he deserves.
Yeah.
Right? They think that God did this to him.
Smitten of God.
Yeah. We ourselves are stricken, smitten of God, afflicted. From their perspective, whenever this servant of God shows up and he is rejected by everybody, Israel says, yeah, he deserves to be rejected. Right? As a Christian, we would look to the high priest, right, who stands before Jesus and says, this man has blasphemed. Doesn't he deserve death? Which is ironic because, he's the high priest. He shouldn't be thinking that. But I'm trying to highlight what the original audience would have thought. Isaiah's saying, yes, God is going to accomplish his word through Israel, but not because Israel obeyed, right? Instead, whenever God sends this servant, you're going to reject him. And you're going to think that God has rejected him. but you're going to be wrong.
Mm.
And this is where you also get like Psalm 118, where it says, "The stone the builders have rejected has become the cornerstone." Right? It all ties together.
How do modern Jewish audiences like explain this?
So again, they will try to interpret this as being about Israel. They would say that Israel is bearing the griefs of the nations. I think that's how they usually try to. I'd have to look into it more, but I'm pretty sure most.
And who is the we?
I think it'd be the world, right? Like I think it's saying that the world has rejected Israel, and Israel is suffering on behalf of the world. So they would say that like anti-Semitism and stuff is their righteous suffering on behalf of the world. But I'm pretty sure that's how they would interpret it. Usually, a lot of modern Jewish understandings of things primarily stem from this one Jewish commentator named Rashi. You can go look into his stuff. It's all accessible online for free. But whenever you look at Rashi, most of his commentary was explicitly anti-Christian. Like he was he was responding to Christian interpretations, to where there's certain things where his response will be 100% in line with what Christians think. But then whenever it's something that gives credibility to Christianity, all of a sudden he starts like jumping through hoops trying to interpret it differently. And also like in general, most Jewish people, like they follow a certain liturgical calendar for like passages that are read, and this passage is skipped. And to be fair, it's not the only passage that is skipped,
Okay.
but it is conveniently one of the passages that is skipped. To where there are plenty of videos you can go to online, which is actually pretty cool, where there are people who are ministering over in like Israel, and they're reading chapter 53 to like a Jewish person, and they're like, "Who is this describing?" And they're like, "Oh, it sounds like Jesus." And they're like, "Yeah, but it's in Isaiah." And they're like, "What?" They're like, "Say again." They're like, "That's weird." Yeah, so they do have to kind of jump through hoops. I would actually encourage you to go look into it, because not all their argument, like some of them have good arguments because they've had thousands of years to like refine them. But to me, I think that it's pretty clear that it's talking about a single individual who is atoning for the sins of Israel.
Mm-hmm.
We continue on. Verses 5 through 7. Who's the last person to read?
Nick.
Okay, Ben, Nick.
But he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening of our peace fell upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. All of us, like sheep, have gone astray. Each of us has turned to his own way. But Yahweh has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. He was oppressed and he was afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that is led to slaughter, and like a sheep that is silent before its shearers, so he did not open his mouth.
One of the most famous passages
Yeah.
in the
Very
entire
familiar.
Bible.
It's honestly hard to interpret these verses in a non-Christian perspective
Yeah.
once you know who Jesus is, right? To where it's like, it's like, what's interesting is that as Christians, we would say that Isaiah 53 tells us more about Jesus' suffering and crucifixion than the Gospels themselves do. When it comes to the Gospels, it just says, oh yeah, they had him flogged and crucified. And then like, it talks about him dying, but it doesn't tell us the details. Whereas this is like, he was pierced through for our transgressions, crushed for our iniquities. Like, it says that he was so marred, you couldn't even recognize his face. It's like, oh wow, like Isaiah 53 paints a picture perfect, like portrait, so that by the time Jesus is on the cross, they're like, oh, wow, that's quite literally what was being described. Like, it is pretty interesting. But in general, again, let's try our very best to imagine we didn't know who Jesus was. How is the original audience interpreting this? He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening of our peace fell upon him, and by his wounds we are healed. So at first glance, as a Jewish person, you hear that. What are you thinking? What does it sound? What does this person sound like? Again, where did I mention this earlier? A sacrifice, right? Like,
usually animals that they would think of.
yeah, like from a Jewish perspective, this is exactly why you sacrifice bulls and lambs and goats, right? Like, it's because you kill them, you slash their neck, you pour out their blood in order to atone for your sins, right? So, like, the chastening of our peace fell upon the lamb, the bull, the goat. That's how you typically think of it.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, this goes into more detail to make it clear that we're not just talking about a bull, a lamb, or a goat, right? Because you typically don't pierce a lamb. It's like, well, what is that describing?
Yeah.
And it's even weirder that he uses that language because at this time period, crucifixion didn't even exist.
Yeah.
Right? It's like it's almost hard to imagine, like, what is he, like, what does Isaiah have in mind when he says this? Like what did the original audience even think? It's hard to imagine it. Because for us, we hear pierced, and we literally imagine nails going through hands and feet. Or we think about, like, the spear
Maybe
piercing
they
his side.
imagine spears or something like that.
Yeah.
Some of that maybe.
Like,
I'm
it's,
sure Isaiah had been given a vision of what was happening.
oh no, probably so. Like, Isaiah probably
He
just
was
physically
like,
saw
what
it.
the heck are they doing to this man?
Yes. But then, like, you have the same thing in Psalm 22. When you read Psalm 22, like, you read it, and you're like it literally says, they pierced my hands and my feet. And you're like,
That's a Psalm of David.
well, yeah, I'm like, David, you're like, David, what were you going through? Like, because David describes it like it's him, but I'm like, David, crucifixion didn't exist back then.
Yeah.
And, like,
Not that we know of.
well, yeah. But we know that David didn't die from that, like, you know, like, to where it's like, what? Like, what did David have in mind? Like, was David describing his own experience metaphorically, or was he also having a vision of, like,
Yeah.
you know, this is where you get into the weird stuff about, like, what exactly it means for the text to be inspired by God. Like, it's hard for us to see, like, well, I guess, like we can address it with Isaiah, we don't know what the experience of the prophet was like,
Yeah.
right? We don't know what he was seeing, we just know what he left
Unless
for us.
one of us is a prophet.
Yeah, which none of us are. But, like, we don't know what it was like for Isaiah to see this. We just know what he recorded.
Yeah.
Right? And so we don't know, like, was he physically seeing Jesus here? I don't know. But it sounds like it. He was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Also, I would argue that some of this language actually explains the gospel more in depth than any of the epistles do. Right? It's almost like the like Paul's letters and stuff assume that you understand Isaiah 53, right? Whenever he says he became sin who knew no sin, so that in him we can become the righteousness of God. It's like, that was a lot of information. Well, not if you know Isaiah 53. It's like, well, yeah, like, if you understand sacrificial language, and you understand that Jesus was the ultimate sacrifice, then we're good. And then it's made even more significant whenever Jesus dies on Passover, whenever you consider the fact that Isaiah is promising a second Exodus, and it's like, oh, there was quite literally a sacrifice, and like it all lines up exactly with what Isaiah is saying, right? He says there's going to be this guy, he's going to kick off the second Exodus, it's going to affect not only the Jews, but the Gentiles too, the Torah is going to go out to all the nations, and it's even going to happen on Passover, so it's kind of crazy. And then he goes on to explain why this needs to happen. All of us like sheep have gone astray, each of us has turned to his own way, but Yahweh has caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. That verse right there gives us the answer we've been waiting for since chapter 1. Right? Back in chapter 1 it said, though your sins are as scarlet, I will make them white as snow.
Amen.
And what we've been waiting for throughout all these chapters of Isaiah, we've been asking, how? Right? How is God going to fulfill his promises to Israel if Israel refuses to obey? And verse 6 tells us. Right? Because whenever it says all of us like sheep have gone astray and each has turned to his own way, can the people of Israel that Isaiah is talking to, can they deny that? No. They're about to be sent into exile for their sin. Right? So yeah, they're like, yeah, we have gone astray. We have turned away. Right? Just like sheep. And that's why a sheep will not do it. Right? The blood of a bull, lamb, goat, it's not going to cut it because sheep go astray too. We are the sheep. Instead, the shepherd has to lay his life down. But Yahweh's caused the iniquity of us all to fall on him. So this man was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. Like a lamb that's led to the slaughter, like a sheep that is silent before its shears, so he didn't open his mouth. So what do we learn about this guy?
What is?
That even at his death, he didn't complain. And
Yeah.
He didn't, you know.
He was led to the slaughter.
Well, one thing that, like, to me, if I'm trying to read this as the original audience, and you hear this stuff happening, you're probably wondering, how is this guy reacting to all of this? Right? I mean, like, shoot, this guy sounds like a righteous person who hasn't done anything wrong, yet he is willfully but he is sacrificing himself for the sake of everybody. He's like, is this guy going kicking and screaming? Like, are you having to drag him? No. This man, he doesn't even open his mouth. He doesn't argue back. Right? He just chooses to lay his life down. Which goes back to verse 1 where it says, who has believed our report? That sounds too good to be true. Right? It's like, that sounds crazy awesome. Who would possibly believe that? Like the idea that there's this perfectly righteous person who is going to be rejected throughout his entire life and then ultimately lay his life down all so that sinful people could be forgiven? It's like, that sounds stupid. Like, this person would be absolutely dumb. But that's what Jesus does. And sure enough, whenever Jesus is on trial, it says that he did not respond.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard that Socrates quote about the perfectly just man?
I've heard of Socrates, but I don't remember about the perfect sacrifice.
I'm trying to find the quote. It's let me see if I can find it. So Plato, I believe I forget who he's quoting. I'll just see if this person quotes it. Let's go over it. But it comes from like whenever Plato lived, what, 300 years before Christ or something like that?
Yeah.
Oh, that's gonna annoy me. Okay, I'm just gonna read this long thing about it. But this is from Plato's Republic, written 300 years before the time of Christ, 350 years before, and he's talking about, like, you know, the philosophers were always just like hypothetically wrestling through the idea of, like, you know, just ideas, right? That's what philosophers do. Like, they wrestle through things. And Plato is talking about the idea of, like, how would you ever know if there was ever a perfectly good person to ever exist? And it says this: now, if we are to form a real judgment of the life of the just and the unjust, we must isolate them. There is no other way. And how is the isolation to be effected? Let the unjust man be entirely unjust, and the just man entirely just. The highest reach of injustice is to be deemed just when you are not. Therefore, I say that in the perfectly unjust man, we must assume the most perfect injustice. There is to be no deduction, but we must allow him, while doing the most unjust acts, to be acquired to the greatest reputation for justice. Right? So the idea is that if you want to have a perfectly wicked person, they got to go their entire life being wicked, and nobody ever knows it. Right? Because that means they're not being wicked just for the sake of people knowing they're wicked. They're being wicked just because they like being wicked. Right? And at his side, let us place the just man in his nobleness and simplicity, wishing, as Aeschylus says, to be and not to seem good. Right? So this, now he says, now let's think about the perfectly just man, the righteous man. This person, he can't simply want to appear good, he has to actually be good, if we're wanting to hypothetically think about the most righteous person.
Yeah.
There must be no seeming, for if he seems to be just, he will be honored and rewarded, and then we shall not know whether he is just for the sake of justice or for the sake of honors or rewards. Right? So if this guy, if people recognize his justice, then he might be rewarded for it, and then you have to question his motives. Was he actually a good guy, or was he doing it because people would love him? Therefore, let him be clothed in justice only, and have no other covering. Let him be the best of men, and let him be thought the worst. Then he will have to be put to the proof, and we shall see whether he will be affected by the fear of infamy and its consequences. And let him continue thus to the hour of death, being just and seeming to be unjust. Then, when both have reached the uttermost extreme, the one of justice and the other man of injustice, let the judgment be given, which of them is the happier of the two. Right? So this guy has got to be perfectly good, even to the hour of his death. And only then you've got a better idea, okay, this guy's actually good. And then it says this: the just man who is thought unjust will be scourged, racked, bound. He will have his eyes burnt out, and at last, after suffering every kind of evil, he will be impaled. Then he will understand that he ought to seem only, and not to be, just. The words of Aeschylus may be more truly spoken of the unjust than of the just, for the unjust is pursuing a reality. He does not live in the view to appearances. He wants to be really unjust and not to seem only. So basically he says, if there was ever to be a truly righteous person on earth, people would have to think he was wicked, they would have to esteem him as wicked, he would have to suffer in the most heinous and evil way, and only after he died would we actually know that he was just. Because basically, he would have to not get a reward from it. And he says, then you know that you found the just man, but you only know it after you've killed him for being wicked. And that's cool, because that's a philosopher 350 years before the time of Christ. And he even says this person has to be impaled. And some translations translate that as crucified. But I think that's kind of cool. To where ironically, the philosophers stumbled upon the same truth that Isaiah saw, right? The way that God was going to bring about his fulfillment for Israel was through this righteous man who was deemed unjust. And so we continue. Brianne, could you read these verses?
Mm-hmm. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, that for the transgression of my people striking was due to him. So his grace was assigned with wicked men, yet he was with a rich man in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. But Yahweh was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If you would place his soul as a guilt offering, he will see his seed. He will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of Yahweh will succeed in his hand.
All right. So there's another plot twist in here. Comes out of nowhere. Verse 8 kind of just falls with what we've already been talking about, right? By oppression and judgment he was taken away. As for his generation who considered that he was cut off from the land of the living. Basically saying that the generation he lives amongst, they will rejoice in his death. Yeah. And then you get to read a little bit about his death. So his grave was assigned with wicked men. Well, that kind of ties to the thing Plato was talking about, right? Like, so this man, all the way to the point of death, he's going to be esteemed as wicked. Mm-hmm. And he's even going to be killed alongside other wicked people. Mm-hmm. As Christians, we would imagine the two thieves on the cross, right? Yet, this is where it gets weird, though. Yet he was with a rich man in his death, because he had done no violence, nor was there any deceit in his mouth. So, after his death, some people are going to come around. And finally, after this servant's death, there are going to be some people, even wealthy people, who realize, wow, you know what? He's not as bad as I thought. But only after his death, which kind of, again, lines with Plato. And as Christians, what would we think of here? Like verse 9 is actually hyper-specific as a Christian. What would we think of?
Saul.
So Saul, yes, and even before that. Like, Jesus crucified between two thieves. Mm-hmm. And then this rich guy named Joseph of Arimathea comes around and says, hey, I've got an unused tomb that I would like to give to Jesus. And it's like, oh, that is like hyper specific. Like, it's quite literally grave assigned with wicked men. So like, he was supposed to be buried with wicked people. But then a rich dude shows up and is like, he was a good guy. I'll give him my tomb. It's like, wow, that is like very specific. It's like, that's pretty crazy. And that's why, like, even to this day, like, the reason why the symbol of the resurrection is of a stone rolled away in front of the tomb is because Jesus was buried in a rich man's tomb. Most people did not get tombs like that. Like, think about how crazy expensive that would be.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, just think about tombstones nowadays. Just the stone slabs that we have are like thousands of dollars.
Not a whole cave.
Yeah, imagine you had a cave carved on the inside with a big... No, that's a family tomb that was meant for, like, rich people. Most people would just be like, you know, like, you'd be buried in a grave kind of like the ones we have nowadays.
You get a stick in the dirt.
Yeah. And even then it'd be temporary, because then eventually they would regather your bones and put them in a thing called an ossuary so that they could bury somebody else there. Right? So, like, the fact that the symbol of the resurrection is a stone rolled away is like, oh yeah, he had a rich man with him. And what's really cool is that Joseph of Arimathea might have gotten his tomb back after 3 days. I doubt that he went on to use that, but it's kind of funny. So yeah, he's going to be assigned with wicked men, but after his death, something's going to happen that's going to make people change their minds about him, right? But then verse 10, Yahweh was pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. Whoa, that makes God sound terrible.
Wow.
It's like, wait, God was happy to kill him? But this guy is righteous. But for the original audience, why was God happy to crush him?
For the sacrifice for his people?
Yeah, I mean, because this is the whole thing through Isaiah, right? Like, God says, I'm going to send a servant who will bring about the fulfillment of my promises so that the Torah will go out to Jew and Gentile alike. I'm going to bring about a new covenant. And so, yeah, like, on one hand, it's tearing God up to put a righteous man to death, but it pleases God to do it because of the end goal, right? Like, God willfully chooses to do this. And but that's also what's cool about it, is that on one hand, God willfully chooses to do it, but on the other hand, the servant himself willfully chooses to go through with it, right? And like, so it's like you've got this idea where it's like God and the servant are working together, yet God is willfully choosing to put his faithful servant to death.
Yes.
And he's happy to do it. It's like, that sounds weird. So Yahweh is pleased to crush him, putting him to grief. If you would place his soul as a guilt offering, he will see his seed. He will prolong his days, and the good pleasure of Yahweh will succeed in his hand. Well, now that sounds even weirder, because what do we read about the servant now?
Verse 10, right?
Yeah. What do we read about the servant? So it was God was happy to put him to death, but
And it's talking about his days being prolonged. Which is weird because he's dead, so how would you prolong their days?
yeah, that's not quite how death works.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, yeah, so he was like, he laid down into the dust of death as a guilt offering, right? And just so you know, whenever animals are sacrificed, they die, right? Guilt offerings are dead. But then it says, he will see his seed. Like, so he will see the things that are born from his sacrifice. He will prolong his days.
It's almost like he's immortal.
Yeah. It's like, well, wait, how... But not even immortal in how we typically think of it, because immortal typically means, like, unkillable.
Yeah, you can't die.
It's like, well, no, but he did die. It's like, well, wait, no. It says that he had a grave. But he sees his seed, he prolongs his days, and the good pleasure of Yahweh will succeed in his hand.
This just makes the Jewish argument for these verses even more confusing, because it's like, how would a country have a grave?
Well, I think that once again they would they would make a metaphor of like exile, like you'd say, okay, the nation's going to be destroyed, but it will be reborn, right? So you could think of them being taken captive in Babylon and returning, or you could think of them being destroyed by the Romans, and then 2,000 years later, all of a sudden the nation of Israel is reborn again in 1948. Like they would probably use arguments like that. So they would say the death of the nation, it was buried and then reborn, right? I'm assuming. I haven't looked exactly at how they explain this verse, but that's probably, like, if I were them, that's how I'd explain it, right? But what is interesting is that there was, and we have evidence of this prior to the time of Christ. I mentioned this on Wednesdays a few weeks ago, but there were some Jewish people who held to the idea of two messiahs, right? They held to the idea of Messiah, son of David, and Messiah, son of Joseph. And a lot of it was inspired by these verses right here. But there are other verses too. Like even when you go back to Genesis, there's language whenever Jacob is blessing Joseph, where it almost suggests that there's going to be this messianic figure who comes from his line too. And you're like, wait, what's going on there? But this wasn't like held by everybody, but there was a pretty big group of people who believed this. And from their perspective, the Messiah, son of David, was like the messianic king who was going to rule and reign forever. That was the popular view at the time of Christ. But the Messiah, son of Joseph, was this figure who shows up, and he's this righteous servant who is rejected, and he is killed. And then from their perspective, whenever Messiah, son of David, shows up, he's the one who resurrects the servant, like resurrects the other, like Messiah, son of Joseph, and then they rule and reign together, right, as like two kings. And so that's very interesting, right? So from their perspective, Messiah, son of David, follows in the path of King David, where he is like this valiant warrior, whereas Messiah, son of Joseph, follows in the path of Joseph, where he is rejected by his brethren, and he is ultimately laid down into, like just like Joseph was sold into slavery and imprisoned and stuff, but eventually he is resurrected to be second in command of all the nations, right? So, but that is another way that some of them began to interpret it. That was prior to the time of Christ. Whereas after the time of Christ, very quickly the Jewish people started like being like, we don't have to talk about the Messiah, son of Joseph thing. Because all of a sudden that started sounding a lot like Jesus. Alright, final two verses of this chapter, and we can go faster through the other chapters. Who are we on now? Nick?
As a result of the anguish of his soul, he will see it and be satisfied. By his knowledge, the righteous one, my servant, will justify the many, as he will bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide for him a portion with the many, and he will divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul to death, and was numbered with the transgressors. Yet he himself bore the sin of many and interceded for the transgressors.
Yeah, so there we have it reiterated again. He died, right? He poured out his soul to death. But I'm going to give him a bunch of stuff. And he's going to, he's going to be fine. It's like, wait, what? It's like, that's weird. So no matter how you put it, this is talking about a resurrection, right? The question is simply, who is being resurrected? Is it the Messiah? Is it some other servant of God? Is it Israel itself? That's really what it comes down to. You just have to figure out who is being talked about here. But no matter what, there is some sort of resurrection taking place, and the death is more than simply like it is a death that is a sacrificial death, right? And so that's why whenever you get to this fourth servant song, it's typically called like the song of the suffering servant, right? There's a suffering servant of God who lays down his life willingly. He doesn't fight back, and his death accomplishes more than simply dying. His death is actually for the sake of people. We would say that it is Israel who is rejecting him and killing him, and he's atoning for the sins of Israel, but then his atoning death has the effect of covering anybody who will follow the God of Israel.
Yes.
Right? And so that is Isaiah 53. Kind of cool,
Yeah.
huh?
Amazing.
Yeah, like we could easily spend more time on it, but for the sake of time, we will move on. Anything else y'all want to add to this right here? Alright,
Basically,
cool. Ben, can you take those away? And after Ben finishes reading, Nick, could you begin the discussion? Because I've really got to use the restroom.
Shout for joy, O barren woman who has not given birth. Break forth into joyful shouting and cry aloud, you who have not been in labor. For more numerous are the sons of the desolate one than the sons of the married woman, says Yahweh. Enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords and strengthen your pegs. For you will spread abroad to the right and to the left, and your seed will possess nations and will resettle the desolate cities.
Alright, so who do we think is his audience in this beginning passage? Like, who is he equating to a barren woman?
Makes me think of Sarah from the Old Testament.
It does. It does invoke that imagery. But who does he mean by that?
Barren.
I'm assuming he's talking Israel.
Yeah. I thought that too.
That would make the most sense.
Yeah. Because they're in exile and they're kind of separated from God, and so it would kind of make sense of them being barren, not giving birth to like their own righteousness because they're not following God in what He's saying. But then it's saying, break forth into joyful shouting and cry aloud. You have not been in labor.
Yeah.
Maybe they come away from your sin and put your faith and your trust in God, and that is the breaking forth and joyful shouting. We're talking about who we think the audience is.
Who the audience is?
Yeah, because it says shout for joy, ooh, barren woman. So we're saying
Oh, yeah.
who is the author talking to?
Who is the barren woman
Yeah.
that is being
What have y'all said so far?
I said Israel.
I would assume Israel, especially given what back in chapter was it 51 or beginning of 52, where it was talking about looking back to like Abraham and Sarah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think it would be saying it's like looking back and saying this is who Israel is, right? Because like Sarah, they're barren, and they need God to be the one who empowers them to give, to give birth. Which is why He's going to send a servant, right? It's because the servant, like Israel has failed to produce the fruit that God has demanded of them. And therefore God is going to send this servant to ultimately equip them to bear fruit.
Yes.
Yeah. So a barren woman who has not given birth. Which, like, honestly, even just like the way that he worded that, like it almost sounds accusatory, right? Barren woman who has not given birth. It's like,
Who
obviously.
doesn't even know the
Yeah.
pain of labor.
yeah, but it's almost like it's saying it's like they're barren from their own choice. Like it's like It's like you should have produced, like, but you're willfully barren, right? But break forth into joyful shouting and cry aloud, you who have not been in labor. Why?
So there's more of the.
He will make a nation from these people yet, despite their barrenness.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not done with you yet. And in this sense, we would probably suggest that the barrenness, like, with Sarah, he was talking about physical barrenness, whereas here, he's probably talking about, like,
Spiritual.
like righteousness, right? He's talking about, like, yeah, so far you've been wicked, but I'm going to, just like with Sarah, I'm going to make your seed more abundant than the stars in the sky. One day, Israel, like, people will no longer think of you as a byword. One day, they will look and be like, yeah.
One
Israel's
day.
awesome. We're still waiting for it, but
Still waiting.
yeah. Enlarge the place of your tent. Stretch out the curtains of your dwellings. Do not hold back. Lengthen your cords and strengthen your pegs. What is the language he's using there? Like, what's he? Yeah, it's pitching a tent. But
Yeah.
not only pitching a tent, but what are they doing to the tent?
Expanding.
Expanding it. Why would you need to expand a tent?
Because it's too small.
Yes, because
Too many people.
there's too many people, right? There's too many, like, so basically the idea is, like, you're barren now, but you're going to need to be making a bigger tent soon. We're going to need a bigger boat. That's a Jaws reference and doesn't really fit into all to this, but make fun of it. For you will spread abroad to the right and to the left, and your seed will possess nations and will
Rather than
resettle the
like-
desolate cities. What's that?
Rather than like a small little camping tent that you normally think of, you're gonna need the Harry Potter tent.
Yes. Yeah, you mean the. I love magic. Yeah.
Magic.
Sorry, just so y'all know, that's the quote that he says when he walks into the tent in that scene, in case everybody's wondering.
I love magic.
I love magic. Yeah, but this is cool. He says that Israel will one day possess nations and resettle desolate cities. That's a far cry from where they're currently at, right? They are currently a tiny little nation that's getting smaller by the day and is eventually going to be sent into exile. But he says one day, though, you're going to spread abroad to the right and to the left. You might mistake Isaiah for like a prosperity preacher if you haven't read the rest of the book. It's like it almost sounds too good to be true. It's like, wow, really? He's like, yeah, but like things are going to get bad
That's
first.
so cool.
Yes.
It's like you're gonna prosper and suffer. Prosper and suffer.
Yeah. All these amazing things are going to
Back
happen.
and
Really?
forth.
When? After you suffer traumatically. Oh, awesome. But then again, like just to play devil's advocate here, you can see how Israel might tie, like, if they were interpreting the servant song as being about Israel, you can see how they might tie these together.
Yeah.
Right? To where it's like, well, that song talked about people suffering, like, it talked about a servant who suffered and died and then was resurrected and received spoil. Well, now you're talking about Israel receiving all these things. Whereas we would say that the reason why Israel can receive these things is because the servant suffered. Right? And that seems to be the portrait that the rest of the prophets paint. Like, eventually they will look on the one whom they have pierced. That's how Zechariah puts it. They'll look on the one whom they pierced, and as a result, they will know his salvation. Alright, jumping forward a few verses, who's reading next? Brianne, go for it.
For this is like the days of Noah to me, when I swore that the waters of Noah would not overflow the earth again. So I have sworn that I will not be furious with you, nor will I rebuke you. For the mountain may be removed and the hills may shake, but my loving kindness will not be removed from you, and my covenant of peace will not be shaken, says Yahweh who has compassion on you. O afflicted one, storm-tossed and not comforted, behold, I will lay your stones in antimony, and your foundations I will set in sapphires. Moreover, I will make your battlements of rubies, and your gates of crystal, and your entire wall of precious stones.
Perfect. Alright. So God begins by comparing things to the days of Noah. And at first, you might think that that sounds really bad, but it turns out that he's actually highlighting something positive about the days of Noah. What is he highlighting?
That he's not going to flood the
He's not going to burn Israel with his wrath again.
Yeah, so after the days of Noah, God made a covenant, and he said, I will never flood the earth in this way again. And now he makes things even better, because he says, after you come to, believe in this servant, right? After After this servant atones for everything, I've sworn I will not be furious with you, nor will I rebuke you. That sounds pretty good, right? Like, that's even crazier. Like, especially when you know how much Israel messes up. It's like, wow, you're never going to be mad with us again? You get the impression that once that finally happens, like, we've reached Eden again, right? It's like, oh, okay,
Yes.
like, things are restored at that point. For the mountains may be removed and the hills may shake, but my hesed will not be removed from you, and my covenant of peace shall not be shaken. Yeah, so what is he saying there?
His hesed, loving kindness, will remain on you. I
It's
will
the same
keep
thing
my
he's been
covenant.
saying for the entire Bible
Yeah,
up to this point.
well, and it's specifically similar to what we had read a little bit earlier when he had said, look up at the sky, look down at the earth. He says those things fade away, right? The sky will roll up and
It's
fade.
Like this has been a constant theme ever since, like, this portion of Isaiah began. The idea that, sorry to get existential here, human life and the stuff of the earth, the world that humans currently inhabit, is very finite, very fleeting. It's, everything is going to come to pass one day, even the earth itself. But God's love and his plan for salvation for humanity is everlasting.
Yeah.
Like, that's never going to be something that is going to be taken away or that can be, stripped away from everyone.
Yeah. Sorry, if we were laughing, it was because as you were saying that, you said God's love will never like it's everlasting, and you just went like he breathed. It was almost like he was saying like amen. He was like yeah. But no, yeah, that's exactly what he's going for. He's saying like, guys, the world around you will fall apart, and you will die, and you will fade away like the flowers. But my word doesn't.
Spoiler alert,
Am I
you're
lying?
gonna die.
Yeah. Spoiler alert
You
for
will
the end of
die.
your story. Doesn't end well for you. Unless you place your faith in him. But yeah, no, he says, my loving kindness won't be removed from you. And there is both a positive and negative side to this. The positive side is that means that you can trust him no matter what, and he will never depart.
Yeah.
The negative side is that it also means he's not in a rush. Right? Because, yeah, you will pass away, and the earth will pass away, but you know who doesn't? Him.
Amen.
And so he's like, yeah, if you want to reject me, I can just wait longer, right? It's like, he's like, I'm not in a rush. Like,
I
it's
can
not like,
outwait the lifespan of the earth.
yeah, it's like, I
I
can,
don't need to,
yeah. So, O afflicted one, storm tossed and not comforted, behold, I will lay your stones in antimony, and your foundations I will set in sapphires. Moreover, I will make your battlements of rubies and your gates of crystal and your entire wall of precious stones.
Sounds a lot like the new weapon.
It does. It sounds like Revelation, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You see, like, the
streets
New
of
Jerusalem.
gold.
Yeah. And what is that like? To be fair, I guess it could be literal because sometimes the prophets are more literal than we think. But let's suggest that maybe it's not literal. What is the general impression that he's saying here? Like what is he suggesting?
I will make you rich.
Yes, I'll make you
Very,
rich
very
and I'll
rich.
make your foundation sure. Right? You won't have to worry about being exiled again. Right? I will make it to where you will not be destroyed again and you will prosper under me. So, that's pretty straightforward. Alright, picking up in verse 13. Take it away, Nick.
Oh, sorry, I was looking up what antimony was.
Oh, did you find an answer?
Yes.
What was
It's
it?
apparently like a metal.
Okay. I wasn't sure, but I kind of figured based on the other things that it probably was. Okay. Go for it.
All your sons will be taught of Yahweh, and the peace of your sons will be great. In righteousness you will be established. You will be far from oppression, for you will not fear, and from terror, for it will not come near you. If anyone fiercely attacks you, it will not be from me. Whoever attacks you will fall because of you. Behold, I myself have created the craftsman who blows the fire of coals, and brings out a weapon for its works. And I have created the bringer of ruin to wreak destruction. No weapon that is formed against you will succeed, and every tongue that accuses you in judgment you will condemn. This is the inheritance of the slaves of Yahweh, and the righteousness is for me, declares Yahweh.
Perfect.
Love that last verse.
Right.
No weapon that is formed against you will succeed.
Yeah, take
And
that.
the reason you like it is probably because it's quoted in the New Testament quite a bit. It's a good verse. So in general, verses 13 through 17, positive or negative?
Positive.
Yeah, all of this is super positive, right? We can go through it pretty quick. Your sons will be taught of Yahweh. The peace of your sons will be great. That's good, right? It's like, yeah, because they're not doing that at Isaiah's time period.
Right.
In righteousness you'll be established. Good. You'll be far from oppression. Good. You will not fear. Good. From terror, from terror, for it will not come near you. Good. Right? All this stuff is good, 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 good. If anyone fiercely attacks you, it will not be from me. What? People are going to attack us? Don't worry. Whoever attacks you will fall because of you. Oh, good. It's like all of this is good. I myself have created the craftsman who blows the fire of coals and brings out a weapon of her to work, and I have created the bringer of ruin and reconstruction. He's like, guys, I got this. I'm in charge.
That's good.
No weapon that is formed against you will succeed. And every tongue that accuses you in judgment, you will condemn. Which shows that they're very righteous at this point, right? I want to look something up real quick. Isaiah 4.
When's the suffering gonna come back?
What?
I said, this is all prosperity. When's the suffering coming back?
Why would you want to focus on the stuff?
I wouldn't.
I don't want to focus on the suffering. It's just that seems to be the cycle of Isaiah.
Yeah.
Peace, suffering. Peace, suffering.
Peace, prosperity, suffering. Peace, prosperity, suffering.
But yeah, no, so all of this just sounds really good, right? No weapon formed against you will succeed. Why? Because God's on their side. Every tongue that accuses you in judgment, you will condemn. Why? Because God will make them righteous, right? They won't be able to raise an accusation. This is the inheritance of the slaves of Yahweh, and their righteousness is from me. Where's their righteousness from?
Yeah.
Yahweh. Interesting. I thought their righteousness was from the servant of God who atoned for their sins. Oh, wait. That's right. Maybe they're one and the same. Crazy. Oh, also, I meant to highlight this earlier, but the verses leading up to the servant song are pretty wild. Like, I quoted them, but it says, Yahweh has bared his holy arm in the sight of all the nations. Like, it says that God is the one bearing his arms in front of the nations, that all the ends of the earth may see the salvation of our God. So God is the one doing something in front of all the nations that will bring them into salvation, and then it goes into the servant song. And it's like, God's arm is bared, and like, it's like, I thought it was kind of cool. And then it says that God is the one who went out before them and came behind them. I'm like, that's just neat. Just want to highlight that. But yeah, so God is doing all this stuff for them. This is the inheritance of the slaves of Yahweh. Wait a second. That's the bad news. In order to inherit all these things, I have to be a slave? But the Bible says I am no longer a slave.
Servant.
It says slave.
Well, that's in that version.
Oh! Okay. Well, I guess this version is wrong.
No.
No. I will say this.
Are servants not slaves?
Yes, so I will say this. It actually really annoys me that a lot of translations translate things as servant, because this is not what it was, right? It's like they do the same thing in the New Testament too. Like in Hebrew, the word is ebed, right? And then in the New Testament in Greek, it's the word doulos, and especially the ESV. Mainly in light of like American slavery, they're like, we want to be mindful of people's sensitivities, so they translate it as like bondservant or servant. It drives me nuts, because that's not what the word means. If you look at the original language, it means slave. But people don't like saying, well, we're not slaves of God. Yes, we are called to be slaves of God. Like, that is, like...
I want to be
like,
a slave of God.
Because a servant is somebody who willfully chooses to be that, usually, right? And if you're not, if you are owned by the other person, you're a slave. Mm-hmm. And that is the biblical definition of what we are, right? God purchased us, we are slaves of him, right? And people don't like that language, but the thing is, you are going to be a slave of something,
That's
right? That's why Jesus says, nobody serves two masters, right? It's like, you're going to be a slave of something. The question is, what are you going to be a slave of? You can be a slave of the Lord, or you can be a slave of your flesh, of your passions, of the world. Like, you're going to be a slave of something. The best thing is to be a slave of Yahweh.
Because God loves you. Because Yahweh loves you.
Yeah. And even if he didn't, he's the
world
creator,
hates you.
right? He's the one who made you. Like, even if he was an evil tyrant, it's better to be a slave of him because he's the one who made things. But it just benefits us that he actually happens to be pretty awesome too. But yeah, so
He's not evil.
if you're a slave of Yahweh, if you serve him, your allegiance is to him, you receive righteousness, and you receive all these other things. That's a pretty good deal, right? Which leads us into the final chapter we're covering today, Isaiah 55.
I got you.
All right, go for it.
Ho, everyone who thirsts, come to the waters. And you who have no money, come, buy and eat. Come, buy wine and milk. without money and without cost. Why do you spend money for what is not bread, and your wages for what does not satisfy? Listen carefully to me and eat what is good, and delight your soul in richness. Incline your ear and come to me. Listen that your soul may live, and I will cut an everlasting covenant with you, according to the faithful Hesed of David.
Interesting. Here we are, hundreds of years after David, and God says the reason why I'm going to continue making more covenants with you is because David was a bro. It's like, David's awesome, and therefore you get to receive that. Like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, David really just goes down in history as an amazing thing. Like, the amount of amazing things God does. What's that? He is the definition of goat. Yeah, yeah. Like David genuinely, God does so many things for Israel because of David.
Yeah.
Like, it's like bro is a stud. All right, so let's summarize this just so we can begin wrapping it up. What do verses 1 through 3a largely say?
Enjoy the good things that God has given you.
He's calling the
satisfying.
people who seek him to come to him.
Yeah.
Enjoy
To paraphrase another wise person who showed up later on, come to me all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest.
Jesus.
Right? Yes. That's what God is saying, right? Everyone who thirsts, come to the waters, right? Like, where the water's at? Him. Like, he is the one who gives them the waters, right? So, all these things he's saying, come to me, right? Verse 3, incline your ear and come to me. Listen that your soul may live. This is made really cool whenever Jesus shows up and he says that, if anybody comes to me, I will give them waters. They will never thirst again. Right? It's probably calling back to verses like this. And then you get to the last part. Why should they come to him? I will cut an everlasting covenant with you. Right? Well, that's pretty cool. Everlasting covenant, that means it lasts forever. It's everlasting. Right?
One more thing I do want to add about
Okay.
the previous verses is that he's not just calling together all of those who have something to give into sacrifice. He's also calling forth those who don't have anything, who don't have any money to spend, who don't have anything to offer to God. He's saying, come and I will let you enjoy life without any cost to yourselves.
Yeah, I will provide for all your needs. Yeah. I'll cut an everlasting covenant with you.
Which is super cool.
It is pretty cool.
Everlasting.
According to the faithful Hesed of David. That's just a really random thing to add there. Right? He doesn't have to explain why. He could just say, I'm making an everlasting covenant. But then he says why. Because of David. Right? David was faithful. And he's not talking about the entire seed of David, because a lot of them weren't.
Yeah.
But David was. Right? David was faithful. He showed Hesed to God. And therefore, he's like, I will make an everlasting covenant with you. And specifically, this ties back to the Davidic covenant, right? God said, I will always have I will put a seed of David on the throne forever, which ultimately will be the Messiah, right? And so the everlasting covenant with Israel specifically flows from the everlasting covenant to David, because they kind of go hand in hand, right? It doesn't make sense for there to be a king sitting on the throne if there is no kingdom for him to rule over. And so he says, since I made that covenant to David, by proxy, you reap the benefits.
It's like, what are you, the king of? The king of nothing?
Yeah. What is this? A kingdom for ants?
Ants.
Alright. Skipping forward a few more verses. Who's reading next? Brian?
Seek Yahweh while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, declares Yahweh. For as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven, and do not return there without watering the earth, and making it bear and sprout, and giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater.
That sound familiar?
Andrew Peterson?
I know verse 7 was skipped, but I do think it's pretty cool.
It's also probably pretty important for helping explain the context.
Yeah.
I mainly skipped it just because I didn't have space on the one slide,
Yeah.
but I figured we might want to go through it as well. So let me just do verse 6 real quick, and then I'll hand it over to you, verse 7. Alright. Seek Yahweh while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. That's important. What's that?
I was going to say, he's saying the time is now.
Yeah, the time is now. Because the idea is that he won't, while his covenant to you is a forever covenant, He's not going to wait forever, right? Like, God is very patient, very long-suffering, very slow to anger, but the anger will arrive one day. The wrath will be poured out. So seek Yahweh while he may be found. Call upon him while he is near. Now, this is even more pressing for the Jewish people because eventually we know the time of the Gentiles will come, right? It's like, he's like, I will go somewhere else. And then you get to verse 7. Nick, will you read it for us?
Sure thing. Let the wicked forsake his way, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return to Yahweh, and he will have compassion on him, and to our God he will abundantly pardon.
Yes. The reason I was saying that's important is because I think that directly impacts how we interpret verse 8. Usually when verse 8 is interpreted, it's just saying that, God's ways are so much, God's thoughts are so much bigger than ours, and his ways are so much, like beyond anything we can ever fathom.
Yeah.
Which is true. But in light of verse 7, I think it changes how we interpret verse 8, because it's actually more, like, Isaiah has something more specific in mind when he says it. So, what is verse 7 communicating?
That even those who were once wicked and doing things unjustly and in opposition to God, if they turn to him, if they return to him, if they take up his ways, he will pardon them for their wickedness and accept them just as they are.
Yeah.
Which is not something we are very used to as a society, of like accepting people for their wrongdoings. And,
We live in cancel culture.
yeah.
So, yeah. Like, our society is probably the worst at it.
Yes. This current iteration of society.
Yeah.
It's not just that we, like, nowadays, we will actually look back on a person in their past and completely ignore who they are now and only, discredit them and, do all this stuff.
No, we actively seek out ways to cancel people.
Yes.
But yeah, so I think that there's twofold implications of that when you get to verse 8. Because like I said, whenever people typically read verse 8, they interpret it very broadly because it's usually quoted out of context, right? Oh yeah, God's ways are bigger than ours and stuff, which is true. But with verse 7 in mind, I think there's a twofold purpose behind this. Or twofold meaning. On one hand, he literally just said, let the wicked forsake his way.
Amen.
Why?
Yes.
Well, because my ways are not as your ways, right? God is righteous, not wicked. So that's like the most general interpretation. But it goes beyond that. Because he goes on to say, and the unrighteous man his thoughts, and let him return to Yahweh, and he will have compassion on him, and to our God he will abundantly pardon. Not only is God righteous, but he is gracious.
Yes.
Right?
Amen.
So it's like, his thoughts are not like your thoughts, and his ways like your ways, because he's not unrighteous like you. But even for the righteous amongst you, his thoughts aren't like your thoughts, and his ways aren't like your ways. Because righteous people aren't always willing to forgive people. But God says, but I'm not like you, right? Not only am I righteous, but I'm also forgiving, right? I'm the brand of righteousness that views forgiveness as a good thing. And hypothetically, we like to say that that's true for us too, but that's usually whenever it applies to other people, right? Whenever other people sin against somebody else, we're like, you should forgive them. But whenever somebody sins against us, we get very self-righteous and say, well, they don't deserve to be forgiven.
Yeah.
Whereas God says, no. According to my view of righteousness, forgiveness is part of righteousness. Like that is a component of it.
Amen.
And he says, so your thoughts are different than mine.
Well, it's almost like the author knew that somebody would read that and then ask the question, like, would ask those two questions, like, oh, well, why would I be forgiven? And so it's like, well, God's ways are higher. And it's like, well, why should that person be forgiven? Well, because God's ways are higher.
Yeah.
Like, how could that be something that's pardoned? Well, because God knows better than
Yeah.
you.
Why should the unrighteous turn from his ways? Because my ways are not your ways. But why would a righteous God forgive an unrighteous person?
Yeah, like that was
Because my ways are not as your ways. It's like, yeah.
He does things totally different than us humans do.
Yeah, which is shown in
Naturally.
Genesis when he keeps choosing the people who aren't the firstborns to be the heirs of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I even think of, like, I was just writing about this in the book that I've been kind of working on lately. The scene, Sodom and Gomorrah, right before it, where God says, Abraham will keep the way of Yahweh by doing justice and righteousness. And then Abraham and God they get into this little debate a little bit, where God is testing Abraham's understanding of his righteousness and justice. And Abraham says, God, what if there's 50 righteous people in the city? Will you not spare all the wicked for the sake of the righteous? And he says, should not the creator of the universe do what is just? But from a human perspective, that's not justice. Because Abraham's not saying spare the righteous. He's saying spare all the wicked on behalf of the righteous. And what we see is that Abraham understands God's justice and righteousness. Like, he understands, yeah, God's ways are higher than our ways, and his thoughts higher than our thoughts. And then God goes on, verses 9 through 10, for as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, my thoughts higher than your thoughts. Basically says, if you think that's impressive, I'm just getting started, right? He says, he's like, we can keep going. My ways are so much different than yours. For as the rain and the snow come down from heaven, do not return from watering the earth, and make it bear and sprout, and giving seed to the sower and bread to the eater. It continues. We'll talk about all these verses together because it's all one continuous thought. Verse 11 through 13. This brings us to the end of the chapter, so go for it, Nate.
So will my word be which goes forth from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, without accomplishing without accomplishing what pleases me, and without succeeding in the matter for which I sent it. For you will go out with gladness, and be led forth with peace. The mountains and the hills will break forth into shouts of joy before you, and all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Instead of the thorn bush, the cypress will come up, and instead of the nettle, the myrtle will come up. And it will be to Yahweh for his renown, for an everlasting sign which will not be cut off.
I would highly encourage y'all to go listen to Andrew Peterson's song called The Sower Song, because the bridge at the end of the song is literally these verses being adapted. But long story short, what God is saying is he uses the imagery of rain. And he says, whenever rain falls to the ground, it does so in order to bear fruit. Right? Rain waters the ground, the water seeps into the soil, and it produces life. He says that's what my word does. Humans, sometimes we'll just speak words and don't expect anything to come from it. Right? We'll make false promises. We'll speak just because we don't like silence, and we'll just fill the empty noise. God says, I don't do that. He says, my word will be like the rain, right? It goes forth from my mouth. It will not return empty, without accomplishing what pleases me and without succeeding in the matter for which I sent it. God says, if I say something's going to happen, it will happen. In this context, he's going to make an everlasting covenant. He will forgive the sinners. They will be made righteous. How? Well, he's going to send the servant, right? The servant is going to accomplish it, right? That's the lingering thing through all of Isaiah. Chapter 1, I will make your sin as white as snow. How? Servant, right? I'm going to send this servant. He's going to lay down his life, and through him, you're going to have the necessary sacrifice. And therefore, you will go out with gladness and be led forth with peace. I love the imagery right here is some of the most beautiful imagery you find in the entire Bible, like the most beautiful natural imagery. The mountains and the hills will break forth into shouts of joy before you. And all the trees of the field will clap their hands. Most likely when it says the trees of the field will clap their hands, the imagery is of leaves rustling in the wind. But obviously that doesn't convey the joy of the scene, right? Instead, it's like whenever the leaves are rustling, that's applause, right? And creation itself is rejoicing in what God has accomplished. Later on, like Paul will talk about how creation is groaning for its creator.
Yes.
But one day, things are going to be so much better to where creation itself rejoices in what God has done. Instead of the thorn bush, the cypress will come up. Instead of the nettle, the myrtle will come up. And it will be to Yahweh for his renown, for an everlasting sign which will not be cut off. So, on one hand, what does this sound like a reversal of?
Was it one of the verses that we read?
No. I'm actually going way back to Genesis. What does it sound like a reversal of?
Genesis. Something's come back to me. When Jacob is blessing one of his sons,
Oh, I'm going back to Genesis chapter 3.
No, Genesis chapter 3.
It's a reversal of
The curse.
It's the curse. Yeah, it's the reversal of the curse, right? God had said, there's going to be thorns and thistles going forward.
Yeah.
But now God says, instead of the thorn, the cypress will tower. Right? It's going to, the curse of the ground will be undone. And so if you actually read this all together, we see both the curse on the serpent and the curse on the ground being undone in these chapters. Right? Because on one hand, the serpent's going to show up, and he's going to atone for the sins of mankind. And then, because of what that servant did, he paves the way for humans to be redeemed and the world to be restored. Right? And that, like, basically, this is pointing towards the fact that this is the culmination of all things. Right? It is like Isaiah is looking so far to the forward, like to the future, that he sees the end of things, where things are being redeemed and restored. And ultimately, who gets the glory?
Yahweh.
God.
Yeah, it will be to Yahweh for his renown. Why? Because he's the one who did it, right? And this is where you could actually imagine, like as Christians, we understand this better once again, because you could say, well, God, to be clear, it looks like there is another person who deserves some of the glory here, because it seems like the servant was kind of the catalyst who brought all this about. And God says, I said what I said. It will be to Yahweh for his renown. What? Well, how can that be? My ways are not as your ways, and my thoughts are not as your thoughts. Right? It's so all of this goes to God for the glory, because as God has said throughout all of Isaiah, he is the only one who gets credit for the salvation. Right? Emmanuel, God with us, God with us, God with us.
But the servant.
But the servant, right? God, that's good. Like, how can you be the one who saved us when the servant's the one who did the heavy lifting? Wait a few hundred years and find out. Maybe the servant will actually be me. Yeah, so it will be to Yahweh for his renown, for an everlasting sign which will not be cut off. So whenever everything is redeemed and restored, that's the end of the story. Right? Well, I guess it's the beginning of a new story. But that story will, it'll just continue on. Right? It will not, it won't be cut off.
Yeah.
So,
Anymore.
really cool. Next time we gather, we will hop into chapter 56. Do I think we can get through 11 chapters in 1 week? Probably not.
Yes.
We'll try, but I doubt it. So we'll
I'll be
probably
here till midnight.
I doubt it.
we'll probably have 2 more weeks through Isaiah, and then we'll be back in 2 Kings. But somebody want to close us out in prayer?
Friggin' Manasseh.
Freaking Manasseh.
I will.
All right, thank you.
Lord, we thank you so much for allowing us to gather together as a group of believers and to study your word freely and to learn more about you. And Lord, I pray that as we went throughout the study and as we take these words and these conversations that we had, that we would just desire to grow closer to you and to love you more and to be more in tune with your character and who you are. God, I pray that you would be with us as we continue conversation after this and go with each of us as we go throughout our weeks. Let us remember what we talked about today and hopefully share it with somebody that we encounter. It's in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.